I always believed my marriage to Lisa was built on trust. After all, we'd been through so much together over the past decade, ups, downs, and everything in between. But as they say, it's not the years you've been married but the secrets you keep that define a relationship. If you asked me then, I would have sworn Lisa didn't have a single secret from me. Her laugh echoed in my mind as I pulled up to the curb to drop her off at work just a few weeks ago. "Don't wait up, Matt," she had said with a playful wink. "These late-night marketing meetings never end when they're supposed to." I didn't think much of it at the time. Lisa worked as the operations manager for a local ad agency, a high-pressure job with long hours and occasional travel. I was proud of her dedication, even when it meant missing date nights or coming home to an empty house. Sure, her schedule had become unpredictable lately, but that's what success demanded, right? Still, things hadn't felt entirely normal. Little signs, a slight shift in how she spoke to me, how she lingered over her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, the subtle change in her perfume. I brushed them off as the figments of an overworked mind. She loved me. I was sure of it. One Friday evening, Lisa texted me just as I wrapped up my shift at the auto shop. "Work ran late again. Don't wait for me. I'll grab dinner with the team." I didn't reply. Something felt off. That persistent nagging feeling refused to let go, tugging at the corners of my mind. I shook it off and headed home, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But the doubts didn't leave me. That night, as I scrolled absent-mindedly through my social media feed, I stumbled across a photo that froze me mid-scroll. It was posted by one of her coworkers, a candid shot of their team dinner. There she was, sitting closer than necessary to her colleague, a guy named Mark. Her body language said everything she hadn't told me, relaxed, leaning into him, her hand casually brushing his. My chest tightened. It was just a picture, I told myself. Colleagues could be friendly, right? Still, I couldn't shake the image. I decided not to say anything to Lisa when she came home hours later, smelling faintly of wine and laughter. That weekend, her phone buzzed more than usual. A name I didn't recognize flashed repeatedly. Each time, she quickly swiped the screen and tucked her phone away with a casual air that didn't match the unease brewing in my chest. By Monday morning, I'd resolved to shake the doubts. If there was something going on, I'd find out sooner or later. And if I was overreacting, then shame on me. Either way, I'd decided, ignorance wasn't bliss, it was dangerous. Little did I know, the truth I sought would shatter my world in ways I couldn't yet fathom. That Monday, I decided I'd take matters into my own hands. Lisa had always been protective of her work life, claiming she liked to keep her personal and professional worlds separate. I respected that, but now it felt like a veil, a convenient shield for secrets I was no longer sure I could ignore. As she left for work, her kiss lingered on my cheek for just a moment too long, as if compensating for something. "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning," she said with a smile, already halfway out the door. I stood by the window, watching her car pull away, my mind racing. For the first time in years, I called in sick to work. If I wanted answers, I couldn't wait for them to fall into my lap. I started with her laptop, which I assumed she'd left at home. It was our shared device for budgeting and occasional movie nights. But the sleek silver casing was missing from the usual spot on her desk. A cold pit settled in my stomach. She'd never taken it to work before. It had always been strictly for home use. Then came her closet. It wasn't something I ever had cause to inspect, but now my fingers trailed over the fabric of her perfectly hung dresses, stopping at the row of shoeboxes she kept at the bottom. I crouched down, lifting the lid of one marked "Pumps." Instead of heels, I found a bottle of wine and 2 unused glasses tucked inside. Why would she hide this? A work celebration, maybe? Or something more intimate? The questions buzzed in my mind, demanding answers. By noon, I'd resolved to head to Lisa's workplace. It wasn't something I'd ever done before, dropping by unannounced, but that seemed precisely why it might work. I'd just forgotten to give her something, I reasoned, a fabricated excuse to see her during the day. What could go wrong? As I walked into the bright, open office, I felt out of place in my mechanic's uniform, surrounded by sharp-dressed professionals moving in quick bursts of energy. I approached the receptionist, a young woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Hi, I'm Matt. Lisa Parker's husband," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "I was wondering if I could leave this with her." I held up a small box I'd filled with papers from our desk at home to make my visit seem more legitimate. The receptionist hesitated, glancing toward the back of the office. "Oh, Lisa's out right now. She stepped out with Mark, her colleague, for an early lunch." My chest tightened. Of course, she was with Mark. "Any idea when she'll be back?" I pressed, forcing a smile. "I can wait if it's soon." "They didn't say." The receptionist's face softened with what I recognized as pity. "You could try calling her?" "No, that's okay. Thanks." I left the box with her and walked out, my mind spinning. It wasn't enough to accuse her of anything, not yet, but it confirmed my suspicions. Something was off. And I had to know what. By the time Lisa got home that evening, I was resolved to play it cool. If she was hiding something, it would come out in her behavior. I'd learned enough to know that people reveal their secrets in the details they overlook. "How was work?" I asked casually as she came through the door, her purse slung over one shoulder. "Busy as always," she said, not meeting my eyes as she kissed my cheek. Her tone was light, her movements graceful, but I noticed her hesitance. It was subtle, the slight delay before answering, the way her hands fidgeted as she set her purse down on the counter. "You stepped out for lunch, right?" I pressed, keeping my tone neutral. "Anything good?" Her body stiffened for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Just grabbed a sandwich with the team. Nothing exciting." Mark's name didn't come up. "Must have been a late lunch," I remarked. "I dropped by your office around noon, and they said you'd gone out." Her hand froze on the wine bottle she'd just taken out of the fridge. "You came to my office?" Her voice was carefully measured, but I caught the faint edge of panic. "Why didn't you call me?" "Didn't think it was a big deal," I said, shrugging. "I wanted to drop something off. The receptionist took it from me." "Ah." She quickly recovered her composure. "Well, I hope you didn't wait long." There it was again, the telltale signs of a liar scrambling for control. Her answers were smooth but not quite seamless, the kind of performance you'd give when you knew someone was getting too close to the truth. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Lisa had fallen asleep quickly, her breathing soft and steady beside me. I glanced at her face, serene in the glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. The woman I had loved for so long, the woman I had trusted implicitly, how much of her was real? I decided that if she wouldn't give me answers, I'd find them myself. By Wednesday, I had reached my limit. The nagging suspicions and unanswered questions were taking over my every thought. I had to know the truth. Whether it would shatter my world or vindicate my doubts, I couldn't live in the limbo any longer. That evening, as Lisa kissed me goodbye for her supposed late-night meeting, I waited exactly 10 minutes before grabbing my car keys. Her office wasn't far, and the roads were quiet. The weight of what I was about to do made my heart pound against my ribcage. Pulling into the lot of Lisa's workplace, I parked in the shadows, well away from the glare of the streetlights. From here, I had a clear view of the front entrance and the large glass windows that framed the ground floor of the building. The office was mostly dark, except for a faint glow coming from a corner room. It was enough to make my blood run cold. Lisa's meeting was supposed to involve a team, but from the looks of it, only one light was on. I got out of my car and walked toward the building, my steps deliberate but cautious. A side door near the loading dock was ajar, a stroke of luck, or perhaps fate. My stomach churned as I slipped inside, the faint scent of stale coffee and printer ink filling the air. I moved silently through the dimly lit halls, guided only by the sound of muffled voices. As I rounded the corner, I froze. Through the glass wall of the conference room, I saw Lisa and Mark. She was perched on the edge of the table, her body leaning into his as he stood between her legs. Her laughter, the one I'd fallen in love with, was low and intimate, not meant for anyone but him. And then, as if to confirm my worst fears, he kissed her. It wasn't hesitant or restrained. It was passionate, unashamed, the kind of kiss you don't share with a coworker. My knees went weak, and I pressed myself against the wall, out of their line of sight. My breathing quickened as anger and heartbreak collided inside me. This wasn't just a flirtation or a misunderstanding. This was betrayal in its rawest, most undeniable form. For a moment, I considered storming in, tearing their cozy little moment apart. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was the icy clarity that replaced my shock, or the realization that confronting her here and now would give her an excuse to twist the narrative. No, I needed more than outrage. I needed to make her face the full weight of her lies. I stepped back into the shadows, my hands trembling as I pulled out my phone. Through the narrow gap in the door, I recorded everything, their embrace, their laughter, the kiss. The evidence would be undeniable. When the moment came, I wanted her to look into my eyes and see the truth she could no longer deny. Satisfied, I slipped out of the building the same way I'd come in, the cold night air hitting me like a slap as I stepped outside. My head buzzed with emotions I couldn't process: betrayal, fury, humiliation. But amid the chaos in my chest, a single thought stood out: I wouldn't just confront her. I'd make her regret every second of this. Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen. The video played on a loop, a sickening reminder of what I'd just witnessed. Lisa hadn't texted me once since she'd left for her meeting, not even to check in like she usually did. I wondered if Mark was still with her or if they'd gone somewhere else to continue their night. When Lisa finally walked through the door around midnight, she was smiling. My heart clenched at the sight of her, so practiced in her deceit. "Hey, honey," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "You're still up?" "Couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. "How was the meeting?" She shrugged, slipping off her heels. "Productive. Long but productive." I nodded, biting back the urge to confront her then and there. Instead, I stood and walked toward her, catching her off guard with a hug. Her body stiffened for a moment before relaxing into the embrace. She smelled faintly of wine and Mark's cologne. "You smell nice," I said, letting her go. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching for something, but I kept my face neutral. "Thanks," she said softly. "I'm going to take a shower. Long day." As she disappeared down the hall, I clenched my fists, my knuckles white from the strain. Every instinct told me to follow her, to demand an explanation, but I held back. Timing was everything. She would face the truth, but not tonight. Tonight I would prepare. The next morning, as Lisa kissed me goodbye and left for work, I began to set my plan in motion. The betrayal had planted a seed of resolve in me. If she thought she could humiliate me, she was dead wrong. I wouldn't just confront her. I'd destroy her. After the truth hit me like a freight train, my world became a whirlwind of carefully calculated plans. There was no way I was going to let Lisa walk away from this unscathed. She didn't just betray me, she tore apart every ounce of trust, love, and respect we had built over a decade. But I wasn't about to confront her without setting the stage for her downfall. The morning after catching her, I called in sick again. Lisa, none the wiser, kissed me on her way out the door, her lips brushing mine as if last night's deceit never happened. "Don't work too hard, babe," she said with a soft smile. I could hear the car door slam as she left, her usual routine masking the chaos that was now my reality. I spent the morning combing through every detail of our lives, searching for ways to turn the tables. It started with the house. Technically, it was under my name alone since I had bought it before we got married. That gave me leverage. Next was the bank accounts. Our joint account was healthy, but Lisa had a small savings account she thought I didn't know about. I also needed help. My boss, Laura, was the first person who came to mind. Over the years, she'd been more than a mentor, she'd become a friend. And to be honest, there had always been a subtle chemistry between us that neither of us acted on. Around 10 a.m., I called Laura, pitching it as a work-related emergency. She didn't hesitate. "Matt, what's going on? You sound tense," Laura said after I arrived at her office. "It's personal," I admitted, sitting in the chair across from her desk. "I don't know how else to say this, so I'll just rip off the Band-Aid. I caught Lisa cheating on me." Laura's eyes widened, a mix of shock and anger flashing across her face. "Oh, Matt. I'm so sorry. How did you find out?" I explained everything, the late nights, the lies, the evidence I'd collected. Laura listened intently, her sympathy clear in her expression. "That's unforgivable," she said firmly, her voice hardening. "What are you going to do?" "That's why I'm here," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "I need advice, and maybe your help." Laura leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "What kind of help?" I hesitated for a moment, then laid it all out. "I want her to feel what I'm feeling. I want her to understand the kind of pain she's caused. And," I hesitated, meeting Laura's gaze, "I think I need to move on." She nodded slowly. "You deserve better, Matt. I'll help you in any way I can." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. "But there's one more thing." Laura raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "I think it's time I show Lisa that she isn't the only one who can move on." A flicker of understanding crossed her face, followed by a slow smile. "Are you sure about that? It's a dangerous game, Matt. She already played me for a fool," I said, my voice hard. "It's time I took control of the board." Laura leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Well, if that's the game you want to play, I'm in." Over the next 2 days, I put everything into motion. I worked with a lawyer to prepare for a divorce, though I kept that part under wraps for now. I secured my finances, ensuring Lisa wouldn't get a dime more than she deserved. Then, with Laura's help, I planned a public confrontation that would expose her lies and give me the upper hand. Laura played her part perfectly. She invited me to a work event on Friday evening, one Lisa would have no excuse to avoid attending. The venue was a small restaurant downtown, intimate yet busy enough for a scene. By Friday afternoon I was ready. I'd chosen my words carefully, rehearsing how I'd call her out in front of our friends and colleagues. The video evidence was queued up on my phone, ready to play the moment I confronted her. When Lisa came home from work, she was her usual bubbly self, chatting about her day as if nothing had happened. "You're coming with me to Laura's event tonight," I said casually over dinner. Lisa looked up, surprised. "Oh? I didn't think you'd want to go to something like that." "Laura insisted," I said smoothly, hiding the satisfaction that came with the lie. "Well, okay," Lisa said with a shrug. "I guess I can make it work." By the time we arrived at the restaurant, I could barely contain the storm brewing inside me. Lisa, dressed in a sleek black dress, looked every bit the devoted wife to anyone who didn't know better. We mingled for a while, chatting with my coworkers as if we were the picture-perfect couple. But beneath the surface, I was counting down the minutes until the moment everything came crashing down. As Laura raised her glass to make a toast, I caught her eye and nodded. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before turning her gaze to Lisa. "To partnerships," Laura said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Though some of us seem to be working on more than one." Lisa's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face. And that was when I stepped in, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Isn't that right, Lisa?" All eyes turned to us, the room falling into a stunned silence. The truth was about to come out, and Lisa had no idea what was coming. The restaurant went silent, every eye in the room turning toward Lisa. She froze mid-sip of her wine, her face a perfect mask of confusion and discomfort. But I knew her well enough to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. "Matt, what are you talking about?" she said, her voice soft and feigning innocence. The anger I'd been bottling up surged, but I kept my composure. This wasn't the time to explode. This was the time to make her squirm. I leaned forward, setting my glass down deliberately. "Why don't you tell everyone about your late-night work meetings? Or better yet, introduce them to Mark." The color drained from her face. What? She stammered, glancing around nervously. You heard me, I said, my voice steady. You've been sneaking around, Lisa. And before you start spinning more lies, let me save you the effort. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The video I had taken 2 nights ago began to play, the soft laughter and intimate murmurs from the recording filling the stunned silence of the room. There was no mistaking the 2 figures in the frame, Lisa and Mark, locked in a passionate embrace. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a few murmured whispers. Lisa's eyes widened in horror as she realized what I'd done. Matt, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't what it looks like. Don't insult my intelligence, I snapped, cutting her off. I gave you my trust, Lisa. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? Her hands trembled as she reached for mine, but I pulled away, standing to address the room. For 10 years I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. Turns out, I was just a placeholder while she played house with someone else. My voice was laced with bitterness, and I made no effort to hide it. Lisa's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to regain control of the situation. Matt, please, she begged. Can we talk about this in private? Why should we? I shot back. You didn't seem to care about privacy when you were throwing away our marriage behind my back. Mark, he doesn't mean anything to me, she blurted out. It was just a mistake. A mistake? I repeated, my voice dripping with incredulity. Mistakes don't happen over and over again, Lisa. Mistakes don't involve sneaking around, hiding things, and lying to my face. Her tears intensified, but I wasn't moved. The crowd was still watching, and though some looked uncomfortable, most seemed riveted by the drama unfolding before them. Matt, I love you, Lisa said desperately. I know I've messed up, but we can fix this. Please, don't throw everything away. I barked out a bitter laugh. Fix this? You think we can just patch things up and pretend like you didn't betray me? That's rich, Lisa. As Lisa's sobs filled the air, Laura stepped in, her calm voice cutting through the tension. You know, Lisa, Laura began, her tone icy. If you had put half the effort into your marriage as you did into lying, maybe we wouldn't be standing here right now. Lisa glared at her through her tears, her composure unraveling completely. Stay out of this, Laura. This is between me and Matt. No, Lisa, I said firmly. This is about everyone you lied to. This is about everyone you hurt. I turned to the crowd. I just wanted everyone to see who she really is. She's not the loving wife she pretends to be. She's a liar, a cheat, and I'm done with her. I took a deep breath, leveling my gaze at Lisa one last time. I'll be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. Don't bother coming home tonight, because you'll find your things waiting on the porch. Lisa's mouth opened, but no words came out. The room felt electrified, everyone waiting to see what she'd do next. Without another word, I grabbed my jacket and turned to leave. Laura followed close behind, her hand lightly brushing my arm as we stepped into the cool night air. You okay? She asked softly. I let out a shaky breath, feeling a strange mix of relief and devastation. Not yet, I admitted. But I will be. Laura nodded, her expression one of quiet understanding. You deserve better than her, Matt. Don't forget that. I didn't respond. For the first time in days, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could start over. As for Lisa, her reckoning was far from over. The next morning, I woke up in an empty house. True to my word, I had packed all of Lisa's belongings into boxes and set them neatly on the front porch. Her favorite clothes, shoes, and even the silly little trinkets she insisted on collecting during our trips, they were all there, waiting for her to pick up. I'd slept restlessly, the weight of the confrontation still heavy on my chest. The house was eerily quiet, and for the first time, I realized how much of Lisa's presence had filled it, not in a comforting way, but in a suffocating one. The quiet felt like freedom. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. For a moment, I thought it might be Lisa, here to plead her case or unleash a storm of anger over my public humiliation of her. Instead, when I opened the door, I found Laura standing there, a coffee in each hand. "Figured you could use this," she said, her smile soft but tinged with concern. I stepped aside, letting her in. "You didn't have to do that," she shrugged, setting the cups on the counter. "After last night, I figured you could use a friend." I chuckled dryly. "I don't know what I need right now, to be honest." Laura leaned against the counter, watching me closely. "You need to stop blaming yourself for her choices," she said firmly. "Lisa's actions have nothing to do with you, Matt. She's the one who screwed up, not you." Her words hit harder than I expected. I'd spent the whole night replaying every moment of our marriage, wondering where I'd gone wrong, what I could have done differently. "Maybe," I said, not fully convinced. "Definitely," Laura replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. As the morning turned into afternoon, Laura stayed, helping me sort through the mess Lisa had left behind. She asked me about my plans moving forward, where I wanted to live, what I'd do once the divorce was finalized. I didn't have answers. Everything felt uncertain, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea what was below. "You've got to think long-term, Matt," Laura said. "What do you want? Not just in the next few weeks, but for the rest of your life?" It was a question I hadn't allowed myself to consider. For so long, my life had revolved around Lisa, making her happy, supporting her career, building a future together. Now, that future was gone, and I had to start from scratch. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. Over the next few days, I started digging deeper into Lisa's life. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure she didn't get away with anything. I went through her financial records, looking for anything I could use against her. That's when I found it. Charges on her credit card for hotels, restaurants, and gifts that I had no memory of. She hadn't just cheated emotionally, she'd been funneling money into her affair. Armed with this evidence, I contacted my lawyer and began laying the groundwork for a divorce that would leave her with as little as possible. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal, just like I had. One evening, as I sorted through yet another stack of papers, Laura called. "Matt, are you free tonight?" "Why?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "Come to my place," she said, her tone teasing. "I have an idea." When I arrived, Laura greeted me with a mischievous grin. She was dressed more casually than I'd ever seen her, jeans and a loose sweater that somehow made her look effortlessly stunning. "What's the plan?" I asked, stepping inside. "We're going to remind Lisa that she's not the only one who can play games," Laura said, handing me a glass of wine. I raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" Laura leaned closer, her voice low. "Let's give her a reason to feel jealous. Let her see that she's not as irreplaceable as she thinks she is." The idea was bold, even a little reckless, but it appealed to the part of me that wanted Lisa to feel the same gut-wrenching pain she'd caused me. Laura and I spent the evening talking, laughing, and sharing stories about our lives outside of work. It was the first time in weeks that I felt something close to normalcy. At one point, she leaned in to take a selfie, her cheek brushing against mine. "For memories," she said with a wink, showing me the photo. But the next morning, that photo was on social media, tagged with a simple caption, "Nothing like a night with someone who deserves better." It wasn't overt, but it was enough. Within hours, my phone started buzzing with messages from mutual friends. And predictably, Lisa called 3 times before I finally answered, her voice sharp with anger. "What the hell are you doing, Matt?" she demanded. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "What do you mean? That photo with Laura? Are you serious? You lost the right to ask questions about my life the moment you decided to cheat," I said coolly. "Matt, you're being petty," she shouted. "Petty?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Coming from you, that's rich." The conversation ended with her hanging up on me, but I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand. Lisa might have started this war, But I wasn't about to lose it. Lisa's reaction to the photo with Laura was more satisfying than I'd anticipated. Her anger, dripping with hypocrisy, was the perfect confirmation that my plan was working. She was no longer in control of the narrative. For once, she was the one blindsided and reeling, and I relished every second of it. But this was just the beginning. I wasn't done yet. The following day, Lisa showed up at the house unannounced. Her things were still stacked neatly on the porch, untouched since I had put them there. When I opened the door, her face was a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, and something that almost looked like regret. "Matt, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, keeping my tone even. "You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." She stepped forward, forcing me to either let her in or close the door in her face. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. Lisa walked into the living room, her eyes scanning the space as if she expected it to feel different without her presence. "This is ridiculous," she said, turning to face me. "Posting pictures with your boss? Trying to make me jealous? What are you, a teenager?" I crossed my arms. "You're one to talk about maturity, Lisa. Or have you forgotten that you've been sneaking around with Mark like a lovesick high schooler?" Her face flushed. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You think this is about fairness? You cheated, Lisa. You lied to my face, humiliated me, and now you want to talk about what's fair?" For a moment, Lisa looked genuinely remorseful. Her shoulders sagged, and her voice softened. "I made a mistake, Matt. I know I did, and I hate that I hurt you. But we've been together for so long. Can't we at least try to work through this?" Her words might have tugged at my heartstrings a few weeks ago. Hell, even a few days ago, I might have considered them. But now I saw them for what they were, a desperate attempt to salvage her pride and control. "You don't get to decide that," I said coldly. "You had your chance, Lisa. You threw it away." Her eyes welled with tears, but I didn't waver. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Nothing," I replied. "Because I don't trust a word that comes out of your mouth anymore." After Lisa left, I sat in the quiet house, the echoes of our argument lingering in the air. Part of me felt drained, but another part felt empowered. For the first time, I wasn't playing defense, I was taking control of my life. Later that evening, Laura called to check in. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better," I admitted. She came by earlier. Tried to act like she wanted to fix things. Laura scoffed. "Let me guess, she didn't apologize so much as try to justify what she did." "Pretty much," I said, chuckling despite myself. "She's all about damage control now that she's been exposed." "Typical," Laura said, her tone laced with disdain. Then, after a pause, she added, "You know, if you ever need a fresh start, away from all this, I can help." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Laura hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There's an opening at our Denver branch. It's a step up from your current position, and it'd give you a chance to rebuild without all the baggage of Lisa and Mark lurking around." Her words took me by surprise. A new city, a new job, a clean slate. It sounded tempting. "I'll think about it," I said, though my mind was already spinning with possibilities. The next day, I got a call from Mark's wife. Her name was Sarah, and I had only met her once at a company Christmas party years ago. Her voice was calm but firm, the kind of tone that carried quiet fury. "I heard about what happened," she began. "And I think we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, unsure of where this was going. "About Lisa and Mark," she said bluntly. "I've been suspicious for months, but after your little public confrontation, he finally came clean. I think we can help each other." "How?" "Let's just say I have some leverage," Sarah said cryptically. "And I'm guessing you do too." A slow smile spread across my face. If Sarah had evidence that could further expose Lisa and Mark, I wasn't about to turn her down. "All right," I said. "Let's talk." As the days went on, Sarah and I exchanged information, piecing together the full extent of Lisa and Mark's betrayal. Between the two of us, we had enough evidence to ruin their reputations, professionally and personally. And while I had no desire to stoop to Lisa's level, the idea of letting her and Mark walk away unscathed didn't sit right with me. You know what they say about karma, Sarah said during one of our calls. Yeah, I replied, a wicked grin forming. Sometimes you have to give it a little nudge. With Sarah's help, I now had a treasure trove of evidence to ensure that Lisa and Mark couldn't crawl out of the hole they dug for themselves. Bank statements, messages, and even damning photos Sarah had discovered on Mark's phone, all of it painted a picture of two people who had gone to great lengths to deceive those closest to them. It wasn't just revenge at this point, it was about closure. About making sure they felt the weight of their actions. Sarah and I met at a quiet cafe downtown. She was striking, with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her calmness in the face of betrayal was both impressive and unsettling. Here's everything I've got, she said, sliding a folder across the table. I opened it and skimmed through the contents. There were hotel receipts, explicit text messages, and even a few emails from Mark's work account where he had coordinated with Lisa. This is a lot, I admitted, my hands trembling slightly. Sarah took a sip of her coffee. Mark's been sloppy for a while now. He underestimated me, just like Lisa underestimated you. I nodded, the weight of what we were about to do sinking in. What's your plan? She leaned forward, her voice low. I'm filing for divorce. And with this evidence, I'll ensure he gets the bare minimum. But I want to hit him where it really hurts, his job. His reputation. I smirked. Funny. That's exactly what I want for Lisa. The plan was simple but devastating. Using the evidence we had, we would simultaneously expose Lisa and Mark to their respective workplaces. Sarah's lawyer had already drafted the necessary documents for her divorce, and I had worked with mine to do the same. But it didn't stop there. Sarah and I decided to send anonymous tips to Mark and Lisa's HR departments, detailing their affair and including just enough evidence to make it undeniable. For Lisa, it would mean the end of her managerial role, a position she bragged about tirelessly. By the time we were done, there would be no room for damage control. A week later, the plan was set in motion. Lisa's downfall began at work. I timed the delivery of the evidence perfectly, right before an important board meeting. Her boss, a no-nonsense woman named Diane, wasn't the type to tolerate scandal, especially one involving workplace relationships. When Lisa returned home that evening, her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She slammed the door behind her and paced the living room like a caged animal. They put me on leave, she spat, her voice shaking with rage. I looked up from the kitchen counter, feigning confusion. Why? Someone sent them emails. Photos. They think I'm having an affair with Mark. And aren't you? I asked coolly. Her jaw dropped. You did this. I didn't respond. Instead, I let her accusations hang in the air, watching as she unraveled. How could you? She shouted, tears streaming down her face. How could I? I snapped, my voice rising. How could you, Lisa? You lied to me. You betrayed me. And now you want to play the victim? She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Meanwhile, Sarah had delivered the final blow to Mark's career. His affair with Lisa violated several company policies, and the HR department wasted no time launching an investigation. Within days he was suspended, and the whispers among his colleagues had already started. Sarah, ever the strategist, had timed her divorce filing to coincide with his professional fallout. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late to salvage anything. As satisfying as it was to see Lisa and Mark's lives crumble, there was an unexpected side effect: my relationship with Laura. In the weeks following the fallout, she had become a constant source of support, a steady presence in the chaos. Our conversations grew more personal, our connection deepening in ways I hadn't anticipated. One evening, as we sat on her couch sharing a bottle of wine, she turned to me, her expression serious. You know, she said softly. You've been through hell. But I think you're coming out stronger. I smiled, the warmth in her words wrapping around me like a blanket. I couldn't have done it without you, Laura. Her gaze lingered on mine, and for a moment, the air between us shifted. She leaned in slightly, her lips just a breath away from mine. But then she pulled back, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I don't want to be a rebound, she said. You're not, I replied, my voice steady. You're the first real thing I've had in a long time. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the pieces of my life began to fall back into place. Lisa was gone for good, her absence no longer a gaping wound but a quiet relief. As for Laura, we took things slow, letting the relationship grow naturally. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life, not dictated by someone else's lies or manipulations. Lisa's betrayal had broken me, but in the wreckage, I found something I hadn't expected. A new beginning. As life began to steady, the dust from the fallout of Lisa's betrayal started to settle. But even with things improving, I couldn't escape the lingering echoes of everything that had happened. Every corner of my house held memories of a life I thought I knew, a life that now felt like a cruel joke. Lisa hadn't tried to contact me since her angry exit after being exposed. Part of me was relieved, but another part waited for the inevitable moment when she tried to claw her way back. People like her didn't vanish quietly, especially when their lives unraveled as hers had. Sure enough, it happened late one evening that I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels without paying attention, when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Lisa's name, and my stomach clenched. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. What do you want? I said as I answered, my tone cold. There was a pause, then a shaky breath on the other end. Matt, I need to talk to you. Please. Her voice was raw, almost desperate. It was a far cry from the confident, self-assured Lisa I'd known for years. You don't have anything I want to hear, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Please, she pleaded. Just give me 5 minutes. Her voice cracked, and I could hear her trying to hold back tears. Against my better judgment, I agreed. 5 minutes, I said. Say what you need to say. When Lisa showed up, she looked nothing like the woman who had once commanded every room she walked into. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup streaked from tears. She stepped into the living room hesitantly, as if afraid I might slam the door in her face. Talk, I said, standing with my arms crossed. She sat on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands. I've lost everything, she began, her voice trembling. My job, my reputation, Mark, it's all gone. Good, I said flatly. Her head shot up, and she stared at me, stunned. Matt, I made a mistake. Stop, I interrupted, holding up a hand. You don't get to call what you did a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door or burning dinner. What you did was deliberate. Calculated. She flinched but pressed on. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I thought Mark cared about me, but he used me. When everything came crashing down, he left. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. Sounds like karma finally caught up with you, I said, my voice ice cold. Her tears fell freely now. I was stupid. I let myself believe things about us, about you, that weren't true. I thought we'd grown apart, but now I see that I was the one pulling away. And now that you've burned your bridges, you think I'm going to be your safety net? I asked, my tone sharp. Lisa didn't respond immediately. She just looked at me, her face crumbling. Matt, I know you'll never forgive me. But I'm begging you to give me a second chance. Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. For a moment, I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch. Then I laughed, a cold, bitter sound that made her flinch. Let me get this straight, I said, taking a step closer. You want me to forget everything you did? The lying, the cheating, the humiliation. And for what? So you can have someone to fall back on now that you've hit rock bottom? That's not it, she said, shaking her head. I want to make things right. I want to prove to you that I can be better. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. You had years to prove that, Lisa. Years to show me the kind of person you are. And you did. Her tears turned to sobs, but I didn't waver. The person you are isn't someone I want in my life. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Matt, please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. No, I said firmly. We're done. Lisa left without another word, her sobs echoing down the driveway as she disappeared into the night. I watched her go, feeling no guilt, no second thoughts. After she was gone, I sat on the porch, staring at the stars. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. The chapter with Lisa was over, and I was ready to start writing the next one. The next morning, Laura called. How did it go? She asked. Exactly how it needed to, I said. There was a pause, then her voice softened. You did the right thing, Matt. Yeah, I said, a small smile forming. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I did. The days after Lisa's departure were unlike anything I'd experienced in years. The house felt lighter without her presence, as if her lies and betrayal had seeped into the walls, weighing everything down. Now, with her gone, I finally felt free. I didn't hear from Lisa again after our last conversation. She had lost the right to call or text, to intrude on the new life I was beginning to build. As far as I was concerned, she was a chapter in my story, a cautionary tale of what happens when trust is taken for granted. But moving on wasn't as simple as forgetting her. The scars she left behind were deep, and healing would take time. Laura became a constant presence in my life during those weeks. She was patient, understanding, and never pushed me to be more than I was ready for. One afternoon, as we sat in her backyard, the sun casting long shadows over the grass, she asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. Do you regret how it ended? I didn't answer right away, taking a sip of my drink as I thought. No, I finally said. I regret trusting her, loving her the way I did. But I don't regret ending it. It was the only way I could move forward. Laura nodded, her expression unreadable. You've come a long way, Matt. You should be proud of yourself. One evening, as I was going through some old photos, I found a picture of Lisa and me from the early days of our marriage. We were smiling, carefree, and happy, at least I thought we were. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia. But then I remembered everything that had happened, and the sadness was replaced with resolve. I didn't need reminders of what was gone. I needed to focus on what lay ahead. The next morning, I boxed up every photo, every keepsake, and every reminder of Lisa. I drove to a donation center and left the boxes there, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I walked away. The offer Laura mentioned, about relocating to Denver, became more appealing the longer I thought about it. It was a chance to start fresh, to leave the memories of Lisa and Mark behind for good. When I told Laura I was taking the offer, her face lit up. That's great, Matt, she said, her smile wide. But then she hesitated. Are you sure you're ready for such a big change? I have to be, I said. This is my chance to rebuild. I'm not going to let it slip away. Then I'm happy for you, she said, her voice warmed. On my last night in town, Laura invited me over for dinner. It was nothing fancy, just the two of us, sharing a meal and talking about the future. As the evening wore on, the conversation grew more personal. You've been my rock through all of this, I said, looking across the table at her. And you've been stronger than you realize, she replied, her voice soft. There was a moment of silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, without thinking, I leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss born of desperation or loneliness. It was steady, deliberate, filled with the promise of something real. As I drove out of town the next morning, I felt a mix of emotions, excitement for the future, gratitude for the people who had supported me, and a quiet satisfaction knowing I had taken control of my life again. Lisa's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it didn't define me. I wasn't the man she tried to turn into a fool. I was stronger than that, and now, I was free to create a life on my own terms. The road stretched out before me, endless and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead.